I'm at the Trinity Worship Center, and then Brother Samuel will not spare me, so I have to sit down and talk to him in the night for some time, and then tomorrow I fly back to Bangalore. So if you can keep me awake, then I will do my best. So I was ashamed of my body. I was on 17 tablets a day. From the age of 5 till the age of 7, every day I was on 2 injections surviving. So I would cover my body completely. All kinds of things went wrong in my life. I was at the lowest point of my life, steeped in depression, rejection, low self-esteem, feeling worthless, feeling unwanted. So at 16 I decided to kill myself. At 16, at the lowest point. Today, depression is crazy how people talk. Just because it's raining a little extra, they feel depressed. Just because the girl saw the 2 ticks and she didn't reply, the boy feels like killing himself. No, it's a different level. The temperature is completely different nowadays when people say, I want to kill myself. My thing was real. I felt completely worthless. And at that point, when I wanted to kill myself, is when I had an encounter with Jesus Christ. I heard the audible voice. That voice transformed my life forever. Jesus said, even though everybody calls you useless, I want you. So, I gave my life to Jesus Christ. At 17, I joined the Bible college. Why? I don't know. Nobody is there to ask the questions. I just joined the Bible college. Why? Because it's good to join the Bible college. I joined, and I joined as an underdog with, no education, nothing. No English also, because I studied in a Hindi medium school. When you study in a Hindi medium school, your English also sounds like Hindi actually. So, but I said, God, I come as an underdog. I come as a person with nothing. Please give me wisdom. I remember reading James 1:5. If anyone lacks wisdom, ask. God will graciously and abundantly grant you. I took that verse without even understanding the background. And I prayed. And God transformed my ability to study. I suddenly had this passion to study. I did so well that I got 100% in Hebrew. I topped the entire seminary. I was given a double promotion from my first year. Directly I went to third year. And when I reached the third year, I was too smart for the third year. So one day they called my mom. My principal called my mom and said, we have a problem with your son. And my mother said, we have always had problem with our son. That is nothing new. But what is the problem? And my principal said, your son is studying too much. Can you please tell him to cut down on his studies? Now when my mother heard that, she was shocked. For her it was like, my son never had this problem before. No, his problem was he never studied. And here you see how Jesus transformed everything. Next thing is, I wanted to become the youngest PhD holder of theology. Why? It's good to study. Why? Nobody's there to ask me the question why. Oh, it's good to study. But good to study and do what? When you don't have a purpose, what is the use of studying? What is the use of studying if I don't have a plan, if I don't have a purpose? How many people, they could not pass their NEET exam in India, they go to Bangladesh, they go to Armenia, Ukraine, somehow finish their MBBS, come back, they can't write the exam again. Finally what will happen? They have the title doctor, but they're doing some business. Why? See, I'm being very direct, but this is a concern for me. Is you need to have direction in life. So I wanted to do my PhD in theology. I don't know why. I went to SACS. I was this tiny little guy, 21-year-old boy. And the principal looked at me and he said, why are you here? I said, I'm here to do my master's in theology. He said, do you have any experience? I said, no, but I'm top rank holder. I got 90.1%. He said, Benny, you need to have some experience in the field. And he said, do you know the word mediocre? I said, no. He said, you go home, open the dictionary. You know what is the dictionary, right? It's a big book inside. You open and you find different words. And so he said, you go, check the dictionary and go into the field for a year and then come back. So I thought the word mediocre was something very fancy, and the principal was very appreciative of my achievements and all those things. So full excited, took the bus, went home, opened the dictionary, and I was so shocked. I said, how dare this man calls me cheap? He calls me second hand. He is calling me that I'm not good enough. But because of that, I I went to join youth with a mission, YWAM. In YWAM, the first topic we learn is how to hear the voice of God. A topic that you don't normally learn in Bible college. I wish they had a subject like that. But I learned how to hear the voice of God. How to know what is my call in life. And what was 6 months? I was only planning for 6 months. This was in the year 1998. Now it's been almost 27 years. I've only gone back to the seminary to be their speaker. And I would tell Dr. Graham Horton, who passed away, when he was alive, I said, "Sir, thank you so much for rejecting my application. Because you rejected, it made me introspect, go back and understand what is God's will. And I thank God that you rejected my application, and today I found my calling, that is to be an evangelist, a musician, to travel the world." So every disappointment is not the end. Young ones and those who have finished here or you're going to finish and leave, there might be some roadblocks, there might be challenges, but please do not compromise your call just because you've hit the wall. Just because you've hit a roadblock. Don't compromise. Just don't settle for something mediocre. Go back to the drawing table. So for me, I went back to Jesus and I said, "God, what is your will for my life?" And the word delight in Hebrew is anag. Anag means something that is soft, delicate, something that is valuable, something that brings you exquisite joy. That is what the word delight is. And the psalmist David says, "Delight yourself in the Lord." Take delight in the Lord. That is, get your exquisite pleasure in God being the source rather than the blessings. It was wonderful, brothers, encouraging you to spend at least half an hour with Jesus. That's the bare minimum. In our center, we run a course called the Apologetics Discipleship Training School. A part of our training is every day students spend a minimum of 1 hour with Jesus. It's part of our program. And it is so important. Friends, don't hit a crisis, then come to Jesus. At the peak of your career, at the peak of your educational success, go to Jesus. Ask Him for direction. Let Him be the compass of your decision making. Sometimes church can be boring. Sometimes messages can be boring. But I can tell you, Jesus is never boring. Don't come to church for the sake of anything else other than the fact that you are coming for the sake of Jesus. And Jesus is never boring. I remember when I finished my DTS, Discipleship Training School, I went back and I prayed. I said, "Jesus, what is your will?" You know, the word delight also means delicate. Delicate, like for example, like a clay. As long as the clay is soft, when it is in the hand of the master can bring a beautiful art of pottery. But the moment the clay becomes hard and stiff, nothing can be done. Sometimes we come up with our own ideas, with our own plans, with our own desires, and then we expect God to put a stamp of approval. And sometimes we want to do some special deals with God. We say, "God, if you can give me this air hostess job with Qatar Airways, I'll give you 20% of tithing. God, if you can give me a seat in this medical college, CMC Vellore, I'll give you 50%. Or we'll threaten God. "God, if I don't get a seat, you don't know what I will do. I will not come to church anymore. Or if I come to church, I'm going to sing out of tune." No, we just come with our own thinking because we think that God is someone that we can manipulate and get things. No, please don't make false promises. We are required or we are called to loving God, not making these deals. You want to give because you love to give, that's it. You don't give because you're going to get something extra. No. God loves us so much that He was willing to give His only Son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for our sins. What can beat that price, that gift? Nothing else can beat that. So learn to become delicate in the hands of the Lord. You know, when you delight yourself in the Lord, when you delight yourself in Jesus Christ, then the joy that you have comes from Him being the source, not what He can do for you. He becomes the source of your joy. Now, the Bible says He will give you the desires of your heart, or He will grant you the desires of your heart. In Hebrew, there are two connotations. One, He will grant you what your heart desires. The second one is even more beautiful. It says that the desires themselves are given by God. When your joy is in Jesus Christ, the desires themselves are birthed in you by God. How beautiful that is. What is God speaking to you? As you study, as you prepare yourself, as you're thinking about career and dreams and being an entrepreneur or anything like that. But what is God's role in your life? You want to become a theologian, but what is God's will? You want to become a pastor, what is God's will? Today there are a lot of people in the ministry who become a burden rather than a blessing. But what is God's will? What is God's desire for you? And for me, my life is all centered in this one. I never wanted to travel the world. It was never my plan. 1996, I got my first passport. I applied for my visa for UK. I was invited by London Missionary Society to work among the Muslims and the Sikhs. My visa was rejected twice. Here God says, Benny, in 2001, I read and I asked, what is your desire for my life? He said, Benny, I want you to travel to every country in the world by 2010. I said, God, how is that possible? I'm a YWAM missionary, and in YWAM nobody gets a salary. We all learn to live by faith. And I had 1,000 rupees a month as my support. And it does nothing really puts things together. The math cannot really put things together. Because it costs so much of money to travel the world. And with an Indian passport, those days we didn't have value. I needed a visa to go to Sri Lanka. But God says, I have this plan for you. My desire for you is to travel to every country in the world. I said, okay God, if this is your desire, then I am willing to say yes to you as long as you are my provider. How many times we have allowed money to shape our desires? We have allowed money to shape our calling. No wonder you study one thing and you end up doing something else. All for the sake of money. Money becomes the final dictator in our lives. We are willing to do anything as long as we can get money. Why? Why do we give such importance for money to become a decision maker? So much so that we compromise with our spirituality, we compromise with our family, we compromise with our friends, we compromise with everything so that we can make some more money. But I'll tell you, if you are in the center of God's will, Bible says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. And I will challenge you today, that is my testimony. So when Jesus said, I'll take you to every country in the world, I said, okay God, I am delighting myself in you. I've become delicate, I've become soft, I'm finding my joy in who you are. But the dreams you have for me is out of this world. I don't think this is possible. But he said, I will make it possible. I said, okay, I will never ask for money, I will never borrow money, I will never take a loan from the bank, I will never take 1 rupee from my parents. I told Jesus, you provide for me. And I will travel the world so that one day when this truly happens, the world will recognize that you are my provider. I'm the only Christian who carries passport to church. This is my passport, the 16 books inside. And this is the proof of how Jesus provided for me as an Indian, with an Indian passport, to travel to every single country on this earth. 257 nations, both sovereign and dependent, including Antarctica, in 6 years, 6 months and 22 days. Just last Saturday, I was in Portugal. We had the World Travelers Meet. It was organized by MTP, most traveled people on this earth. So they invited me. I was the only guy who was paid to come there. Nobody else. And it was a world record. 103 people who have been to 193 sovereign countries. For the first time in history, 103 people came together under one roof in Portugal. Everybody has an ego. Everybody is trying to showcase who they are, how big. Like one guy has not been home for 18 years. Can you imagine? He left home and it's been 18 years he's been on the road. Another guy, he has been to 193 countries 3 times. And like you meet all kinds of people. But when they saw a passport like mine, Mine was the highest number of passports, and the value that I found was far greater than any of these people, because I have to get visas apart from just getting their entry and exit stamps. And they kept on asking me, what do you do? Where do you get the money? How does these things? They also have been to every country, but they were asking these questions. How did you know? And all these are bachas, because they all finished traveling to every country, mostly in between 2020 to 2026. That's the thing. I finished traveling to every country in 2010. And they're like, wow, you're a veteran. You're vintage. No? And they're like, wow, how did you do this? Because today, as a traveler, you can make a lot of money. Because a lot of reels, lot of influencers, unwanted influencers. Everybody is an influencer today. Everything that happens, they want to take a photo. They want to take a video. One guy from Argentina took my video of my passport. And he says, Benny, wow, that video that I posted about your passport, 500,000 views. I got so irritated because all these are Spanish people. I don't understand their writing, so I removed myself from that link. And he says, oh, I want to make you famous. I said, I'm not interested. I'd rather talk to somebody that I can connect with, I can encourage with, I can make a difference. But how did this happen? This is the dream of the world, is to travel to every country. And this was not my dream. But yet, it happened because God's desires became mine. You see, He shaped what my heart desires, because His desires became my desires. And when what you're doing is God's desires, He will grant you those desires. He will take the responsibility in supplying what your heart desires. So friends, especially those who have finished your studies for one phase, as you think about doing your next step, please spend time with Jesus. Learn to delight in Him. Look at Him as the source of your joy. We can pick a broken person like me, a high school dropout, with no confidence, no self-esteem, and taking me across the globe to speak at different places. What is impossible for Jesus? He loves you just like He loves me. I am no better than anybody else. In fact, I am the least among all of you. And yet, all that I did, the secret of my life was to delight in Him. Take some time, spend time with Him, and ask Him to shape. Even if you hit a roadblock, even if you hit a place where you feel like you have come to the end of the road, you know that God has a plan for your life. So don't give up.